the joys of being a priest now for almost 19 years are the stories that you pick up and remember along the way. And I'd like to share 3 of them with you today. These are stories that are very close to my heart, and it's the type of thing where you plant seeds in ministry. And you never quite know whether those seeds are going to grow. God does the watering, God does the growing. But as a priest, you plant seeds all day, every day. But sometimes you wonder, is this going to grow? These are 3 instances where the seed grew. First was an experience that I had many, many years ago where a young woman came to me who was pregnant. And she was in high school yet. And there were all sorts of pressures on her to put an end to her baby and to have an abortion. And she, as you can imagine, was very troubled. She had her whole life ahead of her. Now she was with child. The father didn't want anything to do with her. And she was just scared to death to talk to her parents. She felt ashamed. She was in a bad way. By some miracle, she came to me at the parish where I was serving at the time. We had a good conversation. I worked with her. I worked with her family. And eventually, by God's grace, that child was able to be born, and I did the baptism. And shortly thereafter, I moved on to another parish. And what had started happening is that every year at Christmas time, I would get a card. And I would see the picture of this mom and her baby. And every year the baby, of course, would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the Christmas card came one day with her new husband. They had just gotten married in the church. And the Christmas card came the next year and there were more children. And then the Christmas card then came the next year and more children. And now I receive this Christmas card and I see this beautiful, beautiful young woman who I had some small part in saving her life. And I see her family, I see her mother, I see her husband, I see their children, I see the happiness of their marriage. And it makes me so happy to look at this child and say, I had some part in bringing that life to be. That's one of the happiest things that I've experienced in my priesthood. And I hold it very, very dear to my heart. The second story I experienced, which was along the way, I worked with a couple, very successful professionals, nice family, nice big house, good people. But they came to me one day and they had heard about the church's teaching regarding openness to life. The church's teaching about the gift of children. The church's beautiful teaching on why the use of birth control is wrong and a sin. And they came to me and they said, we don't understand this teaching. It doesn't make any sense. We're mad about it. We're angry about it. And so I met with them and I worked with them over a series of weeks and months. And they soon came not only to understand our beautiful teaching of our Catholic faith about the gift of children, but they both became on fire with their faith. They grew in their love of the Lord practically overnight. And pretty soon they were able to have, and they were welcomed, additional children, and many, many children. They've since moved away, but the wife is now very, very active in pro-life work in the diocese where they live. And their child is growing up. He's a young man now, but one of their older boys has just entered the seminary. And the reason that he gives was because of his parents being on fire with the faith. And so I look at this and I say, the work that I did so many years ago as a young priest, the seeds that I planted, now has borne fruit, not only in openness to life and children, but also perhaps in a vocation to the priesthood to be one of my brothers. And it makes me so very, very happy. Finally, along the way, there was a young woman who was in high school at the time and very, very bright, perceptive, had lots of questions about the faith. And so I noticed her intelligence, and so I said, well, okay, let's get together and talk about all these questions you have about God and the Catholic Church and the sacraments and the scriptures and everything. And the more that I gave her, the more she took in. She was like a sponge. And gave her all the books that I had. In fact, I was even giving her spirituality books that I've never read. She was devouring these books, asking for more, asking for more. And she went off to get a degree in theology from her college in 3 years, graduated early. She went on to get a license in theology, and now she's working on a doctorate in theology, and she knows way more than I do. And I thought to myself, as I look back, seeing this young high school girl interested in God, interested in what Jesus was doing in the world, interested in the Catholic faith, I was able to connect her with the richness of the church's teaching, and now she will be teaching others. You know, there's so many negative things we hear about priests, and ways that priests perhaps have let us down. But I'd like to share some of these positive stories that I've experienced in the small ways in my ministry as a priest. I am not perfect. The Lord knows I've made many mistakes in my ministry, but He's been merciful to me and has allowed these stories that I share with you now and many more to brighten my heart in these perhaps darker days. God is at work in His church. He works through priests. He works through married people. He works through all baptized people. God is at work. This is good news. He's in charge, and all will be well. God bless you guys.
Why did I become a Catholic priest? Well, it all goes back to when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and my older brother, taught me how to climb a 100-foot white pine tree that was across the road from our property on Ranch Lake, 50 miles north of Green Bay in the Coleman and Pound Crivets area. It was a beautiful tree, and from the top of that tree, I could look over all the other trees and see the lake that we lived on, and look off into the horizon and dream about the future. I would go up there by myself once I learned to do that. And I used to dream about what I could become. At first I wanted to be a Green Bay Packer. And then I thought more about perhaps being a medical doctor to come back and serve the wonderful people I was growing up with. Then over time I began to dream a little more about being a priest. I started thinking about how I could give myself in that way. And I would pray and receive the winds that were there at the top of that tree as if they were the Holy Spirit. And I realized that the pine pitch on my hands, that was like the oil of anointing that the bishop rubs on a priest's hands. The balsam that's there and the chrism oil is the same as pine pitch. It was there that I began to dream about growing closer to God and closer to others through this. Certainly I also had other people, such as my parish priest, that had asked me about if I had ever thought about that. And that desire was there too, to imitate the wonderful people who had given themselves to me, the way that my mother and father lived their faith and were so happy to share it with others. It was there that on that pine tree at the top there that I felt God's call. And that's why I'm happy to be a Catholic priest.
Hi everybody, I'm Father Jim Leary, and I'm a pastor of St. Joseph Church here in Appleton for the past 10 years. I'm wearing this brown habit because I belong to the Capuchin Franciscan Order. I've been asked to share some thoughts about why did I become a priest? That's a rather simple question, but the answer is more complicated. I'm currently in my 70s and have been a priest for over 50 years. I'm quite sure that I will come to the finish line as a Capuchin priest. But how did it all begin? First of all, our family always had a high regard for the priests of my parish when I was a kid. Our pastor was elderly, and parishioners respected him. The associate priests were always young and energetic. They'd come out to the playground. They were easy to be with. As an altar boy, they impressed me by their happiness. I had a Notre Dame sister named Sister Mary Venantia in 4th grade. A number of times she would pull me aside and say, "I think you would make a very good priest." Well, that made a big impression on me. I have a brother who is 4 years older than me. He went off to the seminary as a junior in high school. There's no doubt that he was one of the strongest influences on why I became a priest. I also went to St. Lawrence Seminary as a junior in high school. I was so impressed by the Capuchins who ran the seminary. They were good guys and devoted to teaching and being a positive influence on me. When I graduated from the seminary, there wasn't any doubt about what to do next. That was to go to the Capuchin novitiate and pursue studies to be ordained as a Capuchin. I was ordained on September 3rd, 1970. I can honestly say that I am grateful to God that He offered me a vocation to the ordained priesthood. I can't say that there were flashes of lightning or heavenly voices that moved me towards the priesthood. I sometimes think I could have been a much better student and more dedicated to my faith if I had not spent so much time enjoying sports. There's no doubt I could have been an All-American basketball or baseball player, considering how good I thought I was. That did not happen because God had other plans for me. And to this day, I cannot thank Him enough for my vocation as a Capuchin priest. And I cannot thank all those people who positively and even negatively helped me become a priest. Thank you.
When I was a boy in Catholic grade school at St. Pius X Parish in Appleton, my path crossed with Father John Van Duren. He was a young priest. His first assignment, so in his late 20s, early 30s, was at our parish as the assistant pastor. So he said Mass for our grade school on his regular rotation. He was in our classrooms. He worked with my mom and dad in the Confraternity for Christian Doctrine, the CCD, which, as I recall back then, was a kind of a prayer chain. He got my dad to serve Mass at 6:15 in the morning during the week, and he's just a great guy. He's still around. I think he's in his late 80s, retired now in Green Bay. But I remember seeing in Father John someone who was very calm, very gentle and good-humored, also really strong. I remember once there was a man in Appleton who died as a homeless guy. in his late 30s, early 40s, no one to remember or care for him. I remember as a part of the parish boys choir that we sang as Father John made sure that he got a Christian funeral, and also helped to start a memorial fund in his honor. And so this guy in the street, Father John was able to reach out and be Christ in a real particular way. I don't remember a homily he preached. I remember being a sixth grader when he left our parish for another assignment. I remember we sang a song, all 800 of us in the Catholic school back then, "Behold a Great Priest," and we meant him. He turned around from the altar and he started to tear up. And I remember that day thinking, I would like to be like him. Not only to do what he does, that was attractive enough, but to be like him. Years later, as a first-year seminarian, I got to work with him in a sort of a student chaplain setting. And our paths have crossed regularly along the way. He was kind enough to be at my mom's funeral a few years ago. I don't know if he knows the big difference he made, but God used him to plant the seed of wanting to be a priest like him, like Jesus, in me many years ago when I was a young boy.
And then George Bailey, at the very end, discovers that he has lived a wonderful life. Well, the movie was over, TV went off, people scattered to different parts of the house, and I sat there by myself. I was stunned, personally. And I don't know if I said it out loud, but I know I said it in my heart. That movie expresses in its own way why I want to be a priest. Why I want to be a priest. I did not want to build buildings 100 stories high or build bridges. But there was a passion inside of me, this yearning need, this fire to have a life that mattered, that had a life that had some purpose, some value. And I felt, and I still do, by my good fortune, by being a priest, that has been a gift for me. And this is my assumption. And I'm speaking particularly right now to young people. I believe with all my heart that same fire, that same yearning, that same wish, passion to have a life that matters burns inside of you. I really believe that passion to have purpose in our life is really for all of us. And today I say that it can be true for you. Just like George Bailey in the movie, it can be true for you if you plug into and accept the offer of Jesus, who was born in Bethlehem but did not stay there. He is saying, I will put my hand out to you. Please put your hand out to mine, and I will take you to a life that is important and good and valuable and has a destiny beyond what you can dream of.